They convicted Earl Washington Jr. of capital murder in 1984. The jury took under an hour. He was sentenced to die in Virginia's electric chair. Then, 16 years later, someone finally tested a slide the state never wanted opened, a preserved swab from the original autopsy. And it didn't just cast doubt on his guilt. It named someone else. On June 4, 1982, Rebecca Lynn Williams was found stabbed 38 times in her Culpeper, Virginia apartment, raped, and left to die on her kitchen floor. She survived long enough to tell police her attacker was a black man. Nothing more. Weeks later, detectives picked up 19-year-old Earl Washington Jr. on an unrelated charge. His IQ measured near 69. After hours of interrogation, he confessed to this murder and to 4 others he had nothing to do with. Detectives had to feed him the details he kept getting wrong. That confession alone carried the case to trial in 1984. The jury took under an hour. Death. For a decade, the confession was the entire case. No fingerprint, no hair, no weapon. But the state crime lab, following a routine preservation policy, had kept something nobody in that courtroom ever saw: a sealed vaginal swab pulled from Williams during her autopsy, filed away in a Richmond evidence freezer and forgotten. In 1993, under pressure from Washington's appellate attorneys, a technician finally ran that swab through the earliest form of forensic DNA testing available, PCR typing, new enough that most judges still distrusted it. The result wasn't a clean exoneration. It was inconclusive on the primary marker, but it didn't match what the confession said should be there, either. For the first time, someone had tested the one piece of physical evidence the original trial had never touched. That inconclusive result should have ended things right there. Instead, it collided with testimony the jury had already been told was certain. At trial, the state's serologist swore the semen recovered from the scene was consistent with a type A secretor, a category that included Washington. What she left out, buried in her own bench notes, was a second marker on that same sample, one his blood didn't carry. Nobody cross-examined her on it because nobody on the defense had the full worksheet. It existed only as a line item in a property log, never entered as an exhibit. So the jury heard, consistent with the defendant, and never heard the rest of the sentence, inconsistent with a portion of the population that didn't include the true source. The confession named one man. The lab notes, unread for a decade, had already disagreed with him. Getting that swab retested at all took years of fighting. The state's forensic lab argued the sample was too degraded, too small, the conviction too final to reopen over a slide. That evidence sat in a property room requiring a judge's specific written order to unseal, not a general appeal, and for years, no judge signed one. When Governor Douglas Wilder commuted the death sentence to life in 1994, citing the inconclusive 1993 result, he stopped short of calling Washington innocent. The file stayed closed. The swab went back in the freezer. It would take a second round of testing, 6 years later, with technology the original lab never had, to finish what 1993 had only started. In 2000, with newer SDR-based DNA testing now standard, that same preserved swab was tested one final time, and the answer came back unambiguous. It excluded Earl Washington Jr. completely. It matched a man named Kenneth Tinsley, already sitting inside a Virginia prison for a different rape, committed 3 blocks from the Williams apartment, 11 months after the murder Washington had confessed to. Tinsley had never been a suspect. His name appeared nowhere in the original file because the detectives who built the confession never cross-referenced an open assault case a few streets over. Same neighborhood, same signature, one perpetrator. It took 18 years and 2 rounds of testing to connect them because the first investigation had already decided who did it before the evidence existed to check. Earl Washington Jr. received an absolute pardon in October 2000 and walked out of prison in February 2001. After nearly 18 years, 9 of them under an active death sentence for a crime the biology said he could not have committed. Kenneth Tinsley was indicted for the Williams murder in 2007 and entered a plea that closed the case permanently for the second time. No one was ever disciplined for the worksheet that stayed out of discovery, or for the years spent arguing a frozen swab was too settled a matter to reopen. The lab that resisted retesting it is the same lab that eventually proved the state got it wrong. Investigators still haven't explained how a man 3 blocks away, already known to police for a near-identical crime, was never once cross-checked against the Williams file. The swab sat in that freezer the whole time. The only real question left is how many other slides, in how many other freezers, are still waiting for someone to ask.